Okay, welcome to lesson number 2, people. Now, last time we talked about how to start a new sketch and how to do basic extrusions. Okay, now we're going to talk about the sketch environment a little bit more. I just clicked the new sketch and it's asking me which plane I want to sketch on. Now I'm going to select the top plane. I'm going to look at my top view. Okay, first things first. Now, we have something that's opened up on the right hand side, and that's called a sketch palette. And in the sketch palette, you have a few options that you can select while you're doing the sketch. Now, the first one is this look at option. Now, if I were to rotate my screen and have something like that, where I'm not seeing the sketch from the front, I can go and click that and it will turn it so I see it from the top. Okay, it's the same for this example, it's the same as clicking on the top, but when you're doing a sketch on a plane that is not available in this box, you can just click look at and it will make sure that you're looking at it perpendicularly. Okay, now the first one, the line type, we'll get into in a minute because I need to start drawing something for that to happen. The sketch grid is what we have on the back, and we talked about this on the last video. Then we have the snap, which, as you can see, as soon as I click a line, I have this cursor that is a crosshair, and it's not sticking to anything. It's not sticking to the grid. It's not snapping. That's what it's called. It's not snapping. But when I click the snap option, you can see that as soon as I get close to a point that is on the grid, it snaps. Now, this is useful when you're doing dimensional sketches and you know that your dimensions fit on the grid. It's useful. This is a 5mm grid, so each box is 5mm big. But as I get closer, you'll see that the grid divides up into millimeters. Okay, so that depends on how far you're away, you're from your sketch plane. Okay, I usually don't use snap because I like to enter my dimensions manually. So I uncheck that. We have the slice option. Okay, this is for slicing sketches. We're not going to be using that right now. The profile, it will show you profiles, and I'll show you that. Now, we spoke about this in the last video. When you close an open contour, when you make it a closed contour, you'll see that the inside is highlighted, okay? And if I uncheck this profile box, it will not highlight a closed profile. I usually like to keep it on so I know which contours, which line groups are closed and which are not, okay? Okay, I had to take a break, but we're back. Okay, so we talked about profile. Now the points. If I uncheck it and create an open contour, okay, you're not seeing the points at the ends of the open contour, but if I click points, you will see that it shows me the points of that open contour, okay? You're seeing the points here. If I uncheck it, you're not seeing the points, okay? Now, sometimes you might find small bugs in Fusion, like it won't show you the points, but if you check and uncheck, it will start showing them. That's fine, it happens. Okay, I usually keep it on. Now the dimensions. Now, the dimension tool in Fusion is pretty smart, okay? This is the dimension tool, and you will use it a lot when you're doing drawings that or sketches that will turn into manufacturable items. Okay. As soon as I click a line, it's giving me a dimension. Now I can have this dimension diagonally. If I approach the left side, it will keep it diagonal. But if I approach the right side with my mouse cursor, it will turn it into an horizontal dimension. Okay. Now it's smart because you can do many things with this. Let's say I want to have a look at the angle between this line, and this line. So what I do is I click that line and it'll turn into an angle. Now this is an inside angle, but if I step outside, it will show me an outside angle, and I can do this on both sides. Okay. Now let's say I wanna find something else. Let's uncheck this. Let's say I want to find the distance between that and this. Okay, the angle. I'm sorry. Then it will show me an angle between these two lines. Let's say I want to look at this dot, the distance. Okay. As soon as I click that, it will show me that. And if I move my mouse towards the upper side or the below side, it will keep moving that dimension in relationship to the sketch. Okay. So I can, wherever I click next, it will put the dimension down. Okay. Now this box pops up. And in this box, you can enter your desired dimension. Okay. If you click enter, it will keep it as this dimension and it will be locked. But if I write something and press enter, it will turn it into a dimension that I chose. Now that we're in dimensions, let's talk about something that's critical. If I right click on this dimension, okay, I get some options. Okay. Now, one of these options is that it actually changes according to what you're doing. But let's say I want to move this. I want to move this line. Okay. Okay. Now, as you can see, because I created a dimension, now there's a relationship between the bottom line of the triangle and this top line that I'm moving. Okay. Now, let's say I put it somewhere like that. Okay. Now, if I double click the dimension, I can edit it. Okay. If I right click it, I have this option called toggle driven. Now, toggle driven is important because the term driven is important in all kinds of solid modeling software. Now, driven means it is actually being controlled by something else. That might be another dimension or another kind of relationship. Okay. Now, once I click this, now this is not something I can edit anymore. I'm double clicking on the dimension and it's not giving me a chance to edit. And you can see that it's put a parenthesis on both sides of the dimension. That means this dimension is being controlled by something else. And then when I move this line, the bottom line doesn't move anymore. Okay, but the dimension keeps changing. So the bottom line is fixed. Okay, but the dimension keeps changing. Now, if I right click on it again, okay, then I have the option to change other things. I have the option to change the relationships that it has created. Okay, when I right click on it again, and when I want to cancel the control, I press escape. Okay, we talked about this. So nothing is selected now. I right click on it and it says toggle driving. That means I can turn this dimension back into its own control state. So I click toggle driving. Now the parentheses are removed. And when I move this top line, the bottom line moves back again. So the dimension is being kept stable. Okay, let's delete this dimension from it. Okay. We're going to talk more about dimensions, but a little bit later. Now, let's get back to the sketch plate. So, I put a dimension. It's the length of this line. Okay, I press enter. I don't care what it is right now. And if I uncheck this dimension box, okay, it hides the dimensions. It's simple. Okay. Now, constraints, which is our next topic. We're going to get into that in a minute. Projected geometries and construction geometries. Okay. These three we're going to start talking about with the sketch tools. Now, the 3D sketch is something we're going to talk about a little bit later on. Three-dimensional sketching gives you the ability to sketch on 3 dimensions, which means 3 different planes. It will be useful, but a little bit later. It's a little bit complex. Okay. Now, let's delete all this. Okay, let's start. Now, as you can see on the top, I have this sketch tab marked, which means I'm working on the sketch tab. Now, the first one is line. The second one is 2 point, and it goes like this. But if you select create on the bottom of the icons, it will open up the whole sketch list. Okay, this is the whole sketch list, and this will change according to your Fusion updates, because this is getting updated. But when we talk about these, make sure that we're on the same Fusion update. Okay, I always have the latest update before I'm taking the video. So the first one is line. We use this. Okay, now there's a cool thing in Fusion, which I'll talk about right now. It's pretty simple. There's these 3 points, okay, at the end of your commands. When you come over a command, you'll see these 3 points. If you click that, you'll get these options, okay? Now, pin to toolbar means it will pin this command to these icons, okay? It will put it here. But according to the resolution of your screen, you have a limited number of commands that fit here, okay? So if you're on a high resolution screen, you can fit more commands here. It's sometimes easier to use them from the icons. But if you don't, make your selections wisely, okay? Now, pin to shortcuts, okay? If I uncheck this, you won't see it here, but you do have a shortcut list, and that is this. Now, when I right-click, okay, I have these lists that open up. Now, the top lists are controllable with the rotation of the mouse cursor. You can make quick commands from here. This list doesn't open up as fast if you have a lot of models, okay? But sometimes it's actually quicker to use this. So you just right-click any empty space, and you'll see this icon. If I don't let go of the right mouse button, it'll keep drawing this. As soon as I stop, it will stop, okay? Now, there's this line on the bottom of this list, okay? Now, I did an undo. Let's redo, okay? Now, if I go back to create, line, 3 dots, uncheck, okay? And if I right-click it, that line option is gone. So, with the pin to shortcuts option, you can put some features or commands to this opening up box. But keep in mind that this will get filled up. The more filled up it is, the slower it will open. So only put the ones that you use the most here, okay? Now, let's go back. I don't usually use the shortcuts that much. I like to use the toolbar. I like to see it up here, okay? So the line command is the command that I use the most, probably. So it's always pin to toolbar checked, okay? Now there's this option to change the keyboard shortcut. If you use Fusion a lot and you like using keyboards, then get to know the keyboard shortcuts. It makes stuff very fast. So currently it's L, okay? And if you change it, you can always go back to defaults. But currently, as you can see, it's marked as L, okay? So if you press L on your keyboard, okay, that's what you get, okay? Now, in a minute, we're going to talk about slice. I didn't forget that, but right now it's not useful for us, but we're going to talk about that. Okay. Now, the next one, we have rectangle. Now, if a command has multiple options, you'll see an arrow, okay? So you have to wait on the command for this next box to open up, okay? Now, these are different rectangle types, and we'll do an example of each. The 2-point rectangle gives you the ability to select the topmost point or the bottommost point, and vice versa on the other side. So I select the topmost point here, click the bottommost point here, like that's a 2-point rectangle. Okay, let's do the 3-point. Now the 3-point is a little bit different because it'll give you the ability to draw rectangles on an angle. Okay, and the last one is the center rectangle, which you start from the center and you open up. Okay, something like that. Okay. Now these all have their different purposes, and as you can see, they have different types of relationships, and the relationships, or some programs call it constraints, some programs call it mates. Okay, they're all the same thing, but different kinds of commands for the rectangle create different types of constraints between the items of the rectangle. The lines, as you can see on the top one, the lines you can see on the bottom one have different icons, and the third one, which is the center rectangle, has these construction lines. Okay, now we're going to talk about all of these in this video, but right now let's go back to the commands. Then we have the circles. Okay, you can look at these circles by yourselves. I don't have to explain each and every one because they're very logical. Okay, there's the arcs. Now we talked about this in class, especially the tangent arc. Okay, these are segments of a circle. There's the polygons. Now the polygons are important because sometimes people don't get this, but let's make an example of one of them. I selected polygon tool. Now, as you can see, the polygon will have a circle inside of it. That's the part of the polygon that defines your dimension. So this is an internal circle. Okay. Now you can see that I'm playing with the dimension now, and I'm playing with the rotation. There's another window opened up. This small window. That's the window that I put my side count in. Okay. How many sides I want this polygon to have. So if I press tab on my keyboard, I can skip to that window. And I can say, let's say 8. I want to have 8. You can see now my polygon has 8 sides. Okay, let's say I stop my mouse, press tab, and say 50. Okay, now I have a 15-sided polygon. Okay, and when I click, it's there. Now, okay, I had to give another break there. So this is the polygon with my 15 sides, and this small icon is showing me that it was created by the polygon tool. Okay, now if I'm to move one of the lines belonging to this polygon, it will scale. It will scale. It will not just pull the line and break the polygon shape. Okay, so this is important. As long as you see this icon, okay, that means that was created by the polygon tool, and it's keeping its shape as long as you don't break it. Okay. Now that's the polygon. Let's get rid of that. Okay, now the ellipse tool, it's always fun. Okay, I have my two dots. That's the first one that I'm drawing is either a minor or a major axis. It doesn't matter in Fusion. Okay, you start with one. It doesn't matter which one. Then you control the other with your mouse. Okay, so that's the center point of my ellipse. Let's say this is my major axis. Then I can control my minor axis with the mouse cursor. Okay, and I can enter dimension. Let's say I want this to be 20. Okay, and after the fact, after the ellipse is created, I can go back, select the dimension tool, and give the major axis a dimension as well. So that's my ellipse. Okay, let's delete that. Now the slot. The slot is important, and you will use this a lot because slots exist over products. Each different products all have slots. Sometimes we call the slot the capsule one because it looks like a film tablet, a film pill, a medicine pill. Okay, so we have different types of slots. You should experiment with them. Okay, now this is the slot with the two center points of its circles. Okay, you can change your slots from here. Okay, so that's the center point. There's the end point. Okay, there's the one with the arc, which is always fun. Okay, let's create smiley faces this way. Okay, see that's the mouth of a clown actually. Okay, then there's the center point one. Okay, so you have these. Now you can select them from the side, on the right side, the sketch palette, or you can select them if you wait over the slot command. As you can see, these 5 are the same as these 5. Okay, now let's get rid of these. Now the next one, the critical one, the spline. Now let's select the first one, fit point spline. Okay, now the fit point spline, and the spline will continue, by the way, as long as you keep clicking. So if you want to finish your spline, you click this arrow or you press enter. Okay, now this is the fit point spline, and as you can see, the dots that I have clicked are on the spline itself. Okay, but the control handles are extended according to the spline that I'm creating. So if I were to press escape and select one of the control points, I can control the spline. Okay, now you will see this yellow, this green line inside of the spline. Now this green line is the thing we talked about in class. This is the part of the segment of the circle that is tangent to these control handles. And these control handles are actually the vectors at that tangency point. Okay? Now, as you get closer to the point that you fitted on the line, the point that I clicked, the circle becomes closer and the spline becomes more sharper. Okay? And as my handles get away from that point, the circle becomes bigger. Okay? And the spline becomes softer. Okay? So sharper, softer. Okay? That's how you control a spline. You can also control the endpoints in the same way. And if you lose the handles, all you have to do is click on one of the dots. Okay? We will talk more about splines later. Let's, for now, delete all of these. Okay, for now, let's delete all of these. Okay, now let's look at the other spline, the control point spline. Now, when I click the next point, you will see that spline will not be created on it. Okay? Okay. Now, this is the control point spline. These control points are the extensions that are not on the centers of the spline. These extensions, and let's select one of them. Let's change its place actually. Let's make it a little bit interesting. Okay. These are actually the outside relationships that are where the vectors coming out of these arcs meet. Okay, this is where they meet. And a better example of this, or the easier way to understand this, is to create a single one. Let's create a single one. Okay. So that's a single one. As you can see, the vectors or the control handles that we were talking about a minute ago on the other spline actually meet somewhere in space. And the place they meet is the control of this type of spline. Okay. As you can see, I can control the sharpness of this curve by moving this away from the spline, or the softness by approaching. Okay. Okay. So this is also something you guys should experiment with. It's quite fun. It will get some time to get used to it, so don't worry about it. Now, these tools will be used for every sketch, and it's fine. Now, something that we were talking about a minute ago about this shortcut list is something that you might want to use as well. Now, let's select that spline again, and let's draw something, okay? Let's say okay. Now, let's say I want to continue drawing spline. As soon as I click the right click, and get this option, the last command that I used will be on the top, okay? So I can keep doing this, click right, select the top from the shortcut, and keep doing that. Now, some people find this easier, some don't. Some like to go and click the icon. But keep in mind, it's sometimes faster, okay? There's also, as we talked about, when you finish a line, to finish the line, when you sketch a line, to finish the line, you get this small check mark. It turns green when your cursor is on it. But you can also finish it by pressing enter, or you can right click an empty place on the screen and click OK. You can also finish it by clicking cancel. Okay. They both finish the line. Sometimes, if you don't want commands to be applicable, you can click cancel, or sometimes when you want to finish sketches, you can click cancel or OK. Okay. Now, here's an interesting thing in Fusion, which we didn't talk about. It's a very simple thing, but some people don't realize it. Okay. When you click to select something, okay, if this is a line that we're talking about, it will turn a darker shade of blue. Okay. But sometimes you want to group select stuff. Okay. And you can do this by clicking and dragging. Okay. Now, but you have to watch out. There's two ways to click and drag. Okay. If you click and drag up, okay, up and right, you will get this orange pinkish box. Okay. But if you click and drag down, okay, towards the left side, you will get this yellow box. Okay. Now, if I were to do it right, I would get this orange, pinkish orange. Then if I did it left, I'll get this yellow. And The same goes for up. So it's right or left. Okay. Now, what's the difference? There are multiple segment lines here. Okay. If I click and drag and get this orange box, okay, the ones that are in the box, completely in the box, are selected. Okay. But if I were to do this, okay, the ones not quite in the box will also be selected. Okay. As you can see, this line isn't completely in the box, but it's being selected. Okay. But if I did it the other way, that one's not selected. So this is very useful, and you might use this a lot, okay, when selecting stuff. Now, now that we opened that parenthesis, let's talk about selection a little bit. The selection is very simple. You have different types of selection options, okay? Now, you have window selection, which is what we're using. You have freeform selection, which you can use. It's like the tool in Photoshop, okay? You have paint selection. It's not very useful when doing sketches, but it will be more useful when we're doing models, okay? Then you have the selection tools. You can select by these tools. They define different features. It's sometimes useful. And you have what we call selection filters, okay? Now, the filters show currently that I can select everything that is available as a modeling feature in Fusion, okay? And the top one is very useful. I have select through, which means I can select stuff that are on the back sides of a model, okay? This doesn't apply to sketches, but it applies to models as well. If I uncheck this, that means I can't select stuff that is on the back. I can only select stuff that is looking at me, okay? We'll do examples of these. And if I uncheck select all, and let's say I want to only be able to select sketch points, okay? That means I can't select the line anymore, okay? Let's go back to window selection. I can't select the line anymore, but if I do a selection feature, it'll select all the points, okay, that were in the orange box, okay? If I do the same thing with the yellow, it will select what is completely inside, okay? Okay. Now, let's go and unselect this. Let's select all for now. Then we have the selection priority, which means which type of feature it should select first, okay? So if I would select one of these, it would select that one before what is on the background, okay? So if I had a box, let's say, okay, if I had a box, if I extruded this box, okay, I have an extrusion. If I were to say select priority, select body priority, okay, it will select the body first, okay? So that's what it's good for, okay? Now, let's go back to window selection. Let's go back to our sketch. Let's look at our sketch, okay? Let's delete these. Oh, I have to select all from my filters, okay? Now, let's go back to our sketching. Okay, we have the conic curve, okay? It's like a single spline that we talked about, okay? I can play with it after I create it. I can turn it into a triangle, and then I can turn it into a very relaxed, it's like a spline. It's very similar, okay? But it's a single one. I have points. I can create points, which will be very useful in the future. I have text. I can create a curved text or a straight text, and as soon as I select the place to write that text, it will allow me to write it. Select the font, define a height. Points are not important in Fusion. Millimeters are much more useful because it will go into production. You can define the spacing between the characters. You can flip it horizontally or vertically. You can align it, okay? And you can make a curved one. You need a path, which we'll talk about. Actually, let's draw a path. Let's draw a path right away. Let's select arc. Let's select this, something like this, okay? Let's do it. Select text, curved text, select the path. This is the path, okay? I can have it inside or outside, okay? I can say fit to path, so the length of the path is what defines the character spacing, okay? See this character spacing? It goes away as soon as I say fit to path, okay? I can flip it, okay? So these are stuff that you need to get used to, okay? Okay, so this is what fit to path does. So I might not like that. I might like to, if I want to move it, let's say I want to move this text along the path, I can put spacing, normal space character on the path. So there are different options that you can play with, okay? Okay, now let's get rid of this. Now, we have mirror, circular, rectangular pattern, projections, and dimensions. Dimensions is the same as this one, okay? Now, let's say I don't want this icon, okay? I don't want this icon anymore. I can move that icon out of my toolbar. How do I do that? So I select one of the icons, I left click it, I pull it out of the menu, and it's gone. Let's say I want to put it back. We just talked about this. We go over that feature, 3-point, pin to toolbar, and it's back. Okay. I can change the placement of the icons. The most I use can be grouped together, for example. Okay. So that's how I do manage my top. Right now, it's not managed. This is not the most common way I use it, but it's a good example because it'll be more familiar to you guys, okay? Now, mirror. But before we get to what's under this line, we have to talk about constraints. Now, I said we will get back to this, so we're getting back to this constraints parts. That's on the sketch palette. Now, constraints are very critical in sketching, especially for sketching for production or manufacturing. So these are all the constraints that we have, okay? Now, one of the ones that you will use the most is what we call the construction geometries, okay? Now, the construction geometries used to be on this list, okay? But now it's not because it's tied to a single command and it's much better this way, okay? Now, what is that command? So that command is X. And what does it do? Okay, let's get to that. Now, let's say I am going to create a box. Okay, so this box, I'm not actually going to create it. I'm going to create a prism. Okay, so right now this weird shape does not have all the relationships, all the constraints defined. It has a single constraint, and that's the horizontal constraint, okay? You can see the small icon on the top, okay? That's the horizontal, okay? And that is represented by this single icon on the top. Now, this single icon actually represents two different features. It also represents the vertical. So how do I how do I do that? So if I click that and go over to a line that is close to being vertical and click on it, it will turn that line into a vertical line, okay? Now the vertical means, in this scenario, that it is completely parallel to the y-axis. As you can see on the background, there's this faint green line, and you can also see it right here. The y-axis is looking towards the top right now. That is completely parallel to this line, okay? Now, if I go close while this icon is selected to a line that is mostly horizontal and click it, it will turn that line into a horizontal line, okay? So that's my horizontal icon. That's my vertical icon, okay? Let's do this line as well. That line looks mostly vertical, so it turns it into a vertical relationship, okay? Clicking escape, get rid of the commands. Now, this constraints, if I uncheck it, as you can see, my constraint icons are being hidden. They don't go away. The constraints are there. I'm just not seeing the icons. Now, this is sometimes useful, especially when you're doing complex sketches. You might not want to see everything that is on the screen, okay? So it's good to have the ability to hide some of the icons when you're not using them, okay? I usually don't hide them, but some people do, so just so you know. Okay, so we have our box. Now, this box, as you can see, it's a profile. It's highlighted in a light shade of blue, okay? And when I go to extrude it, like we talked about on the first lesson, okay, the whole rectangle is being selected. Okay, so I can extrude it. Okay, let's cancel that for now. Let's look at our sketch. Okay, now if I wanted to, or for some reason, I didn't want to extrude the whole rectangle right away. Let's say I wanted to, not that one, I wanted to select the line. I wanted to extrude, let's say, a shape like this. Okay. So I go to extrude, click on my rectangle, but I can't select the whole rectangle right away because this line has divided the rectangle profile into two. Okay. This is my second one. Okay. I can either select that one, select both, or select the other. Okay. The nice thing about this, if you know what you're doing, is you can extrude one of them one way, okay? And then my sketch is gone, but I can unhide my sketch and use the same sketch for another extrusion. Using the same sketch for multiple extrusions or other kinds of features is possible. Sometimes it's good practice, sometimes it's not, okay? Sometimes the better practice is to make a new sketch for every feature, okay? But that's different. It's very subjective. People do it differently, okay? Let's finish that extrusion to the other side, okay? Now, I have two extrusions towards different sides from the same sketch. I can unhide that, hide that sketch or unhide it, okay? Now let's go back to our sketch. Now, so this line, this divides my rectangle into two. But if I select this line, that's the diagonal line, and press X, you can see that it's turned into a dashed line, okay? And this line type feature became active. The first one says it's a construction line. The second one says it's a center line. Now, if I select center line, it turns into a small and big dashed line, okay? And if you get closer to it, it's not going to change. It's not going to scale with the screen, so keep that in mind. So this has a long dash, a small dash, long dash, small dash. But the construction line has constant size dashes. So keep that in mind. We mostly use construction. Okay, so what did construction do? Okay, let's go back and try and extrude this again. And when I select it, it didn't break my profile. So it's the same profile. I can't select either side. Okay. So, as the name suggests, this line is used for construction. But here's the thing. You can do many things with a construction line that will not affect your sketch. And one of them, we'll get to one of them. First, let's take this construction line and make it a horizontal relationship. Then take our trim tool and cut away the right side of the box. Now, as you can see, the construction line doesn't enable a closed profile. Even though we have 4 sides, because of the construction, this is not a closed profile. If I were to select my construction, press X, it turns it back into a normal line. But if I select it, press X, it opens up to construction, and this is not a closed profile. Now, we were talking about create, and we came to mirror. Okay, what mirror does is very simple. You select the lines. It's called, all of the items are called objects in Fusion. So line is an object type. You select these 3 lines, then you select your mirror line. Okay, select your mirror line, and it creates a mirror. Okay, now as you can see, as soon as it created a mirror, it puts some new icons. See these icons? Okay. In the constraint palette, you have what's called a symmetry. Okay. Symmetry means what's on the left side is equal to what's on the right side, or what's on the other side of your mirror line is equal to what you created in the first place. And what does that mean? Okay, what that means is important. If you keep your construction line intact, which means you don't cut it or do anything with it, the side that you created first will impact the side that's being mirrored. So if I were to pull on this side, as you can see, both sides act. Now, this is also applicable to dimension. So if I were to dimension from the mirror line to my first side, let's say I do 10, okay, you can see that the other side is being dimensioned as well. So this dimension is driving, okay? What if I wanted to dimension the other side as well? As soon as I click to place the dimension, Fusion is going to give me a warning. It says the dimension would over-constrain the sketch. Create a driven dimension instead. We talked about this. So over-constraining means you're doing stuff that is unnecessary and will create a problem with the constraints of the sketch. That means you don't have to create this constraint because it is being controlled by something else. And in this example, it's being controlled by the mirror function. So what I can do is, if I want to keep this dimension just to be able to see it, I can say create driven. So the first dimension is the controlling dimension, and the second one is the one that is being controlled. In Fusion, we say driving on the left side, driven on the right-hand side. So if I were to, Let's get rid of that dimension. Double click the one that is being driving. Say I want to make this 15. Okay. Click enter, and the driven one also becomes 15. Okay. So why would I want this driven dimension? Sometimes these mirror features can be a little bit apart, and you might want to see the dimension of that faraway feature on the dimension with the parentheses so you know what it is. So it's like a sanity check. It's nice to have. Okay? So that's how the mirror works. Now let's do the pattern. Now you also understood you should get used to the construction line feature. Okay, it's going to be used a lot. And if you remember, guys, and if you don't, I'll just make another one with the rectangle, center rectangle. As soon as we drew it, there was these diagonal lines. These are construction lines as well. The only difference is it's being done by Fusion. Okay. So now let's get rid of these and let's talk about the pattern. Now, actually, let's do the constraints first. Let's finish the constraints because the patterns we can do later. That's fine. Now, let's say I have a line. That's my line. I say, okay, it put a horizontal relationship for me. That's fine. Then let's say I have another line. These two lines don't intersect. However, I want them to have a relationship that is touching, okay, or intersecting. What I can do is the next one. It's called a coincident relationship. Coincidence is any time there's a touching, okay, or you want them to be on the same level. And as an example, let's do it. Let's select coincidence. Let's select this point of this line and select this line, okay? As you can see, it brought the dot at the same level of this line, okay? I can do the same with this one and touch that one. Now we have this dot. This dot is formed with two coincident points of these two lines, and now they're a single dot, okay? Now, this relationship that we created can be seen here with that icon. That's the coincident icon. But Fusion helped us and also created what we call a perpendicular constraint, okay? Now, coincidence, like we said, you will use a lot to make relationship between lines that you want to touch or be on the same level. That is also the case for perpendicular. Now, how would you use perpendicular? It's very simple. I know that this bottom line is horizontal, so I'm going to create a line that is slightly on an angle. Now, if it's slightly on an angle like this, you will realize that this is not perpendicular, okay? But if you made a mistake in your sketch and you created a line that looks like this, and you don't see it, you don't see that it's not parallel, okay? And Fusion will help you with this. Once you get close to being parallel, it will show your horizontal line, okay? You can see this very faint horizontal constraint mark coming up. And if you were to go over a line that you want it to be parallel to, okay, it will also create a parallel relationship. You see these two diagonal lines being formed, okay? You see that? Okay, that means it's being parallel to the right line, to the line on the right, okay? But let's say you had a very little offset, okay? And you didn't realize it. This will create a problem when you're moving forward with your model, okay? If you don't realize this. For this reason, And if you're sure you want to make this line perpendicular to the bottom line, what you do is you select the perpendicular command, click your line, click the bottom line, and it puts this small constraint icon so you can be sure. You can be sure that this angle is 90 degrees. And if you're paranoid, you can go and measure it. But as soon as you click OK, it's going to say there's a constraint, create driven. So for all the paranoid people there, it's a 90-degree angle. Okay. Now, let's move forward. Okay. Let's actually get rid of these. Okay. Now, the tangent, and we talked about tangent. Now, I'm going to prepare 3 examples there. That's first. Let's create a segment. Okay. Then create something like this. Okay. Now, let's say I have this circle. I have a line. And I want to create a tangency relationship. That's the third icon. Click the tangent relationship. You click your line and your circle, and you will see that it puts this small icon. That's the tangency icon. Okay. Now, if I were to move this line, you will see that it will keep touching that point no matter what. Okay. Even if I were to put another constraint, let's say I want to put a horizontal constraint on that line. Okay, the tangency stays. Okay. Okay. So that's the first example. Let's say I have another circle or a part of a circle, and I want to create a tangent line from the beginning. What I do is I come over that circle. So wait for my icon to change from a crosshair to an X. I click on the circle and I pull the line without letting go of my left mouse button. Okay, this creates a tangent line from the beginning. So as I move it, you can see that the tangent relationship is being formed. And when I let go, okay, I have a tangent line. I have a tangent line. I didn't want to create that. I have to press X to get rid of that. Okay. I have a tangent relationship. Not X, you have to press escape. Keep mixing those. Escape cancels all commands. Okay. Now I have a tangent relationship between that circle segment and this line. Okay. And where they meet, okay, you can see that there's a dot, there's a point, and that's where the tangent relationship is. Now, you can also do this with 2 circles. Create a tangent relationship between these 2 circles, and you have a tangent relationship. Okay? It's very useful. Okay, so that's the tangent relationship. Now, let's go over to equal. I have a line. Then I have another line. And then I have another line. Okay? When I press equal, select my first line and my second line, you will see that these 2 lines will be matched in dimension. Okay? Do they have to be parallel? Let's see. I create one like that. I select this one and this one. You can see now they're the same size. Okay? Now, this is useful. As long as this relationship stays, they will be matched. This is only in length, and it applies to the ones that are being selected. Now, will this work with more than 2? Of course. Let's do another one. Create an equal. Select it. Okay, yeah, you can see that they're all equal no matter which angle. Okay, so sometimes it's useful in a sketch to make sure that you have equal lines. The other one, it's very logical. Okay, I have two lines, then I have the parallel constraint. Parallel constraint makes sure that these two lines are parallel. Okay, and I can't break this constraint by pulling on the points. Okay, they will stay parallel as long as the constraint remains. Okay, you can do multiple constraints. Maybe this is a good example for that. Let's say I have two parallel lines. Then I want to put also an equal constraint on these. So now I have parallel and equal. Okay. I can't angle the line anymore, and the size changes together. Okay. That's that. We talked about perpendicular. Okay. Now fix and unfix. Okay. This is useful sometimes, but I don't think you will use it that much. It's good to know. Now you can see that as soon as I create a line, it's blue. And I can see the 2 points on the ends because it's an open contour. If I select fix and select that line, you can see it turns green. Anytime you see green in Fusion, that means it's fixed. You can't move that line, okay? You can't move that line, but you can still move the points, right? Okay, this is important. If I select fix and I select the points, now the points are fixed as well, so I can't do any movement with the points or the line, okay? So, can I do this together? Sure. I can do this. I can do them all together, okay? That's fixed, this is fixed. You can see it's green. And when you do it again, it's unfixed, okay? So when you want stuff to not move for any reason, this is the way to do it. Okay, let's delete that. Now, what's the next one? Midpoint. Okay. Now, let's say I have a line. And I have another line that is perpendicular. Okay, that's the relationship. Okay. If I select midpoint, then I select this dot, and I select my line, you can see that the line moved, so this perpendicular line is right in the middle of this horizontal line. Okay. Now, this is not the only way to make a midpoint in Fusion, because Fusion also gives you the ability to see where your midpoint is. And all you have to do is, when you're starting a new line that is perpendicular, you move your cursor on the line and it will change to a triangle. You can see it changing. Okay, that's the midpoint. As you can see, it's the same icon that is being formed. Okay, and you can do this as well. Okay, that's the midpoint relationship. So there's no one way to do this. Okay, midpoint is useful as well. You will use a lot, especially in symmetrical objects. Now the concentric, it's very self-explanatory, but let's have two circles. When I have a concentric relationship, they will have the same center. Now keep in mind, this does not only apply to circles. If I have a slot, okay, and if I have a circle, I can make those two concentric as well, okay? as long as it's a part, a segment of a circle, okay? They can be made concentric, okay? Just like that. So, even if I were to move this, the centers will remain together, okay? It's good to know. It's very useful, okay? Okay. Now, we have free left, collinear, very useful as well. Let's say I have a line somewhere in my sketch. Let's say I have something like this, okay, a weird shape. Then let's say I have a nice rectangle, okay? I want to make sure that the bottom of this rectangle is in line with the top of this shape, okay? Now, I didn't put any dimensions to these, which I should. Let's put some dimensions. Let's start with the angle, okay? Enter, enter, okay? So the shape doesn't deform as we move it. Yep. So I have one driven. Nope, that's an angle. I don't want an angle. I want it to select a point. So I have a distance. Okay. Let's have a distance like that. Now, as you can see, the shape is still blue. Okay. But something will change. Now, I put so many dimensions on it, right? Now, with these dimensions, I would expect this shape to be static now. Okay. Why isn't it static? Because it does not have a relationship to the origin or anything related or in relationship to the origin. So the only reference we have when we start a sketch, a model, anything, is our first reference. We start with the first reference. So what does that mean? This origin point is our reference. If we create a relationship to that, okay, let's do this. 200, okay? We created a single relationship. That means we can still move it up and down, but we can't move it left to right, okay? If we create the second relationship, the height, which will also be 200, you can see as soon as I do that, the object turns black. Black means everything is constrained. It's done. You don't have to define anything else on this sketch object, okay? You can't move this. You can't do anything with it. Now, we constrained this sketch contour, this closed profile to the origin, okay? You don't have to constrain everything to the origin because once this item is fixed, you can also use this item. Okay, now we were talking about how to reference stuff. Now, you can see we talked about the left side is completely black lines now. That means it's completely constrained. This box, however, does not have any constraints other than the horizontal and vertical lines, so I can play with it in space. So let's constrain that, starting with the dimensions. Okay, let's say 200. Well, okay, but I didn't want this. I want this to be the exact same height as the right side of this weird shape. So what I can do is I can get rid of this dimension and I can say I want this top side of this rectangle to be in line with the left hand weird shape top side, okay, this line. So I click escape, get rid of these commands, and I select collinear, okay. I select this line and I select the line that I want it to be collinear with, and I get this icon. This icon appears on the one that I selected and on the one that is being referenced. And as you can see, it has turned black. Okay, that means I can't move this line anymore. I can still scale it this way, but this line is in the same level as this line now. Okay, these two are collinear. I can do another relationship with the bottom. Can I do a collinear relationship? Let's try. I go and select collinear. I select this line and this line. And Fusion gives me an error. Okay, failed to solve. Please revise. Please try revising dimensions or constraints. Now, why? Because this line, as you can see, is not horizontal. Okay, and the other relationships on the right-hand side, especially these horizontal relationships, are preventing me from having a collinear relationship with this angled line. Okay. Can I fix that? Sure. I can get rid of this horizontal constraint by deleting it. Okay. Press the delete command on my keyboard, or you can do right click on the constraint and say delete. Okay. Then I can perform a collinear relationship with this line. Okay. Now this is angled as well. Okay. It's not a perfect square anymore. And it turned black. Okay. And if I were to scale this, you can see it keeps getting larger now. Okay, the lines are separating as it goes further away. Okay, so I have two black lines that are fully constrained to this space. What do I want to do with this one? Let's say I get rid of this constraint, delete that one. Delete the line, the constraint. Okay, and make a collinear relationship between these two. What's going to happen? It's going to match it up because that's the only way you can make a collinear relationship. But I didn't want that. I wanted them to have the same angle. So what I should have done is make a parallel relationship. Okay, so they're parallel. And let's say I want to make a parallel relationship between the right-hand side line, the one that I'm showing with my cursor, with the left-hand side. So I get rid of this constraint and make a parallel relationship with this one. Okay. So I have these matching continuous shapes. Okay. Now, as you can see, it's not fully black yet. I have the top and the bottom black, but the sides are not black yet because they're not referenced. So let's create a reference with those. Select my dimension and create a dimension between these two. Now, let's say I want 100. Okay. As you can see, that one turned black as well. It's fully constrained now. The only one left is this. Okay. How should I do that one? Let's put an angle on that one. Let's define an angle. Let's say create driven. Okay. Why doesn't it let me put an angle? Because it has a parallel relationship. This one has a parallel relationship with that one. So that wasn't the missing constraint. Let's delete that one. Let's put something else. What would I need? I could have a distance. I could have a distance. Let's put a distance. I want this 2 points to have a distance the same as this. Now, there are 2 ways to do that. I can either type the same number here, but if this number has other points trailing after the first 3, like this one is 599, but I bet this one goes longer. Writing the same number is not going to make it exactly the same. If I want it exactly the same, so what I need to do is I click on this dimension. And as soon as I click on that dimension, you can see that this box says D11, okay? The box is called D19. The D stands for dimension 19. And we're going to get into that in a later video. But right now, the D19 box says D11 in it. And D11 is the name of this dimension. If I hover my cursor and stop, it'll tell me that the D11 dimension is this. And right now, the D19 dimension will use this dimension as its dimension. And when I click enter, you can see it says fx 2 dots, semicolon, colon, with the same exact dimension. Okay, now everything turned black. It's fully referenced. Okay, the fx stands for function. Okay, this is a function. It says make this dimension equal to this dimension. Okay, D19 dimension is equal to D11 dimension. So what does that mean? What that means is if I double click the D11 dimension and make it 300, okay, this dimension will change according to what this dimension is, okay? So double click 400, okay? It became 400. Double click, let's say 200, it became 200. So they're in relationship with a function. Now, what's happened here? We created a left object, a weird polygon. It was a sketch that was first constrained with dimensions, then created a relationship between that sketch, the left-hand polygon, with the origin. Then I created another right prism, a sketch polygon, and create a reference not with the origin, but with the first object, okay? So all the lines are black and they're fully in relation, okay? This cannot be moved anymore, okay? So that's how you create relationships in a sketch. Now, what do we have left in constraints? Okay, the curvature is something we'll get into when we get into splines. Symmetry is what we talked about in the, remember this construction sketch? And the rest we talked about. You should definitely experiment with these, okay? Because there's a lot of knowledge to be had in creating sketches that are fully defined, okay? If you don't make your sketches fully defined, let's say I have a blue line here that allows me to play, then you might make mistakes when you turn these into models, especially when you want to do manufacturing or production from them. These cannot be left unconstrained. They need to either have a dimension or a function or another type of constraint that limits their or controls their dimension. So you have these options to define your sketches, okay? I would like you guys to experiment with these. Experiment with all the sketch tools that we talked about, except the ones that are under mirror, We'll talk about them later. The circular pattern, the rectangular pattern, and the projections. We'll talk about them in the next lesson. And also, I need you guys to play with constraints, okay? So, that's it for now. I'll see you guys in class.